Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FerryMen podcast. I'm your host, Kyle, and this is my co-host, Andrew. We like horror movies and want an excuse to talk about them. We like to keep things casual and have a laugh while talking and pointing out our favorite scenes. We hope you enjoy. So, today we'll be covering The Conjuring, a horror movie that came out in 2013 and was directed by James Wan. So, Andrew, starting off, what'd you think? Let's just jump right into that. What did you think about The Conjuring?
I definitely thought it was a good movie, but it's had some scares, had a couple laughs. All in all, I'd say it's a solid film. I don't think it did anything wrong. That's just my general opinions, but
Yeah, and I kind of get a similar, it's like nothing really particularly comes to mind. It wasn't bad by any means. In fact, for a movie that came out in 2013, which is like around 10 years ago now, the actual movie was pretty good for being an older film, especially horror movies, which have a tendency to not age the greatest.
especially like nowadays with most horror just being the same old, just get scared, I'll move on. This one was like, yeah, it had some spooks, but it was interesting too. Like the whole fact that it was kind of based off of real events, the actual people. Their names were like Ed and Lorraine, right?
Yeah, the Warren family, which were, as far as I know about the real people, they were like real life spiritualists, and I know the movie is based off of like a case they had. As far as like how accurate it is, I'm not entirely sure. I can't vouch for it. I didn't do any sort of research on them. I'm just going to assume that some artistic liberties were probably taken for the sake of making a film. Again, a reminder that this is we're talking about a movie here, so this is going to have tons of spoilers, especially since we're probably going to start getting into plot and actual scenes and things we liked and pointing stuff out about the movie. So starting off, they kind of did something a little odd, which was, I don't know if you remember, but they opened up on the, apartment thing where they basically show, the origin story for the Annabelle doll, or how they
the Annabelle
it.
doll. Yeah, I don't think it was too strange, because I think it kind of set up for them being, what they are. What was it, like demonologists, and they were, obviously like, well, there's a spooky ass doll, and it's like,
yeah, but it's still a tad bit odd, because they're like, oh, this doll is hyper dangerous, because it's like, oh, obviously a demon's in the doll and is trying to possess people, and then they have it in the locked box, and then it ends up becoming a plot point later in the movie, but it's overall not super relevant to the plot.
No, it's definitely not relevant to the overall plot, but I think its main purpose is just to be like, yeah, no, this is weird stuff that happens a lot, and these two people are used to seeing things like this. So then, when the actual problem in the main plot occurs, and they're kind of like, maybe even a little surprised, it's like, oh, this is a problem because they saw Annabelle doll earlier, and they were like, oh yeah, we'll take it and we'll help you out. And then this one's like, oh my god, there's a horrible demon possessing your family.
Yeah, and actually, cutting over to the family itself, it's like, I actually don't know when the movie takes place. It almost gives me 70s vibes, 60s, 70s.
It definitely was in the 70s or the 80s.
Yeah, like sometime around there. This family, like a dad, a mom, and then they have like 5 daughters.
They have too many daughters.
Yeah, I noticed that in the film where I thought it was 3 daughters originally, and then it's like, oh no, they have like 5 or 6 daughters. Yeah, they move into this farmhouse. I think it's somewhere in like Rhode Island, and it's spooky, of course, because the entire film at its core is like a haunted house movie, which I'm pretty sure is like kind of somewhat of a staple with James Wan with his horror movies. As far as the actual like spooks in the movie, there are jump scares, but I wouldn't say anything in the horror movie is particularly scary.
No, there's nothing in it that's like you look at it and it's genuinely scary. There was one scene that got me when Lorraine fell through the floors, and then she was kind of in the basement looking around, and then that face of that random like ghost woman appeared. That one kind of caught me off guard. And I was like, oh, that's the only real like scare though, and it was kind of just a jump scare. It wasn't anything like that I would wake up in the middle of the night.
Horrifying.
Yeah, it's not gonna keep me up at night.
Yeah, and I would say a really strong point throughout the movie was the basement, which they do a good job setting up by like the kids basically messing around and finding like they accidentally cause a hole in the wall in like the main floor under the staircase, and then they find out that like, oh, this is a boarded up entrance to a basement, like we have a basement, but it's like a creepy, spooky, genuinely terrifying part of the house. I would say probably the most effective scare, or I guess like sequence in the entire movie for me is actually related to that, and I don't know if that's just because I have like this deep-seated fear all the way back from like childhood of like creepy ass basements, but there's a part where the mother is like, it's in the middle of the night, and she's getting kind of drawn out by the spooks.
Mm-hmm.
And I, if I remember, it's like she sees someone like head into the basement from the top floor because it like looks down into their main like foyer. And so she goes down there and like walks to the top of the basement stairs, but then the door closes behind her and it is pitch black. And she's sitting at the top of the stairs, she can't see anything, and then she like lights a match. And it's like a continuation of the clapping scare from earlier where they're like hide and seek, and it's like, oh, clap 3 times or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh yeah, but in this sequence it's not her daughter clapping. A pair of extra hands appears from the wardrobe, claps, draws her over, and then she's like, oh wait, my daughter's not here, and removes the blindfold. It's like,
yeah,
spooky. But
didn't she get pushed down the stairs in the basement when she went down there?
I think it was after the match she lights like a pair of hands like goes like by her head and claps, and it like causes her to freak out.
Yeah, it causes her to freak out, bang on the door and stuff, but like I think before that, like when she was first going in, you know, she's like looking around obviously. I think she got like pushed down the stairs, and then that's obviously kind of what sent her trying to go for like to get out or something, and then the whole match scene, but I could be wrong on that. I don't remember exactly.
I could also just be forgetting how the particular scene played out.
Someone gets pushed down a flight of stairs.
Yeah,
that's all I know.
It probably did happen as like the setup to her freaking out. Really effective scenes. The movie's pretty well shot. Again, the quality is solid. It's solid.
Mm-hmm.
All the practical effects aged really well, of course. I thought it was actually like oddly sweet at moments with Ed and Lorraine, who have kind of taken a step back from demonology due to like some bad experiences and just trying to like raise their daughter. So they've just been mostly like doing like these weird college seminars, and then the family, after enough nonsense happens and they're like genuinely worried, reach out to them, and the Warrens are like, fine, we'll take a look, but it's typically not ghost related.
Yeah, no, the wife of the family went to one of their seminars, saw what they were talking about, and was like, oh, these people could help me, and caught them in the parking lot, and then tried to convince them. Ed was like, nah, this is like a load of baloney, you know? It ain't nothing. And then Lorraine's like, well, you know, we gotta help out this family. We gotta help out this family. And then they go, and it's Lorraine walks in for the first time, and it's like, yeah, this place is awful.
Yeah, no, and I think they did a good job setting up the Warrens very well, where it's like, oh, they show them doing some cases earlier or I think it was just one case, but they show them doing something earlier.
Well, yeah, the Annabelle case.
Well, not the Annabelle case. No, like a different case to show them like why they didn't take it seriously.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. When they went into the house and they're like, it's not like a ghost, it's just your pipes.
Yeah, where they're like in an attic and they're like, oh, you hear whispering and tapping like in your vents, and they're just like, hey man, you just have bad pipes. Like, look, here it is. You have bad pipes and a creaky floorboard. And they're like, oh, wait, it's not a ghost? And he's just like, it rarely is. And so that's kind of why they like blow off the mom at first. And then I think what actually gets Lorraine to like full on agree to go with them is because like the mom mentions that she has daughters at home that she's genuinely she's fearing for.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of tugs at her heartstrings because she has a daughter at home.
Yeah,
and they do some cool stuff where like once the Warrens realize like this family's legitimately being tormented, they like stay there and they help out and they're nice. And the Warrens call in like their what is it? They call in like a sheriff, I think, and then like wait, no, is he a sheriff? I know they call in like a tech guy as well, whose whole goal is to like help record stuff and get evidence. And then they have like another larger dude who I think is like a sheriff, but he might just be a different tech guy.
No, he was like a police officer.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I was right on track. Yeah, so they call in the cavalry once things start getting way more serious. They're starting to piece things together in relation to that tree that you see on like the promotional material, like the movie box art stuff, where it's like, oh, there's an old story of like a crazy witch who hung herself and like killed her kids. Which was neat, but I think they used it as like a red herring at one point. Or they didn't they do like a little switcheroo with it?
I don't think they did too much of a... Well, no, the switcheroo was like a whole other thing. I think the switcheroo was just the fact that I think any parents who lived there just ended up killing their children. I don't think there was anything crazy specifically about the tree other than like Lorraine goes there and it's like, oh look, there's a woman hanging from the tree in the ghost world that I can see. Like,
yeah, because Lorraine sees like dead people because she's clairvoyant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah, they do the Warrens genuinely well. Like, I actually like the family in the movie, and I like the Warrens, and then them kind of like helping each other out and just being genuinely good people really helps the fact that, like, you don't want to see something bad happen to these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it does a good job of like setting up the whole, like, you need to help these people, you know, these people, which is kind of tough. In horror movies, I know that there's like a good amount of dissonance between like the people being affected on screen and like the things that are happening to them. But in a runtime of only like 112 minutes, they do a good job of it.
Yeah, no, they incorporate it pretty well so that, like, it's in there and it's meaningful, and it's not just like, oh yeah, care about these people. No, it's like they take time to like show you that you should care about them.
Yeah. So yeah, so at one point after all the clairvoyant, like, oh, this place is really bad, and then they start piecing together the stuff about like the witch or the demon or whatever, like the root cause is that's trying to like kill kids. I think that's the part when they realize that the wounds that the mom has are like ghost marks or something.
Yeah, no, it's like, it's not just bruises from iron deficiency or whatever. It's like actually something.
Yeah. And so there's like a really good moment where she like goes down to take a nap and tells Lorraine, like, hey, I'm gonna go take a nap and watch the kids. And I think she gets fully possessed at that moment, or a possession tries to happen.
I think Lorraine was outside and she
That's right,
saw
she
the ghost in the window of the bedroom.
Yeah, and she came rushing in.
Yeah,
That's
but the
right.
door was locked, and then the mom opened her eyes and the ghost was right above her.
Yeah, and again, effective scares. They were fine. The actual like showing the ghost isn't nearly as effective as a lot of the more subtle stuff, which is typically how it goes. I mean, if there's a particular part of this movie that just hasn't aged well, it's going to be those.
Yeah, no, whenever they showed the actual ghost, it was usually just like, jump scare. And it's like, you kind of saw it coming in some places. The only time it got me was that one I mentioned earlier when she fell through, and it was kind of just like, oh, hello. But yeah, no, it's like, half rotted looking ghost. It wasn't really that scary. Most of the factor came from like just the ambience of it and like the subtle things, like the clapping, because like that's kind of trippy. It's like, oh. And actually, about the clapping thing too, it's like, you know, that entire game was made up just for this movie to have like that weirdness of like, oh, there's something clapping. That's not one of the people.
Yeah, probably. That seems like some weird stuff they would make up for a movie, but it also seems realistic. It's like a weird Western.
Just some weird game that these girls have made up. Oh no, that doesn't relate to me though. I've never made weird games in my life before.
God. Yeah, no. Yeah, the movie, we have the possession scene, and then I think it begins to get more serious with Um, it's the trick. No, wait, no. Lorraine falls into the cellar after that, I'm pretty sure.
After the possession?
Yeah, I
No, I don't think so.
I could have. Okay, I could have sworn was her daughter attacked after that? Was Lorraine's daughter attacked after that?
I don't remember exactly what happens after the mom is possessed, but I think what you're talking about is when the daughter went missing. They were looking for her, and she was found like inside the closet, and then behind, like within and behind the closet, there was like another room where she can hide. And then while they were checking that out, Lorraine was in there, looking at the toys that were left in there. Then she fell through. The part where the kids got like actually attacked was when, I believe it was.
Was it the part where?
I don't know. Hang on, I'm trying to remember, because I think the part where the actual kid got attacked was when, like, the sleepwalking kid was sleeping in their room, and then, like, I think the cupboards were making the noise again. So she gets up, investigates it, is like, what's going on? Looks up above the dresser. There's a ghost who just, I'm not gonna lie, that scene was kind of goofy. Just jumps on her, and then screaming ensues.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, but the bunch of the nonsense happens. We get our falling scene, pre-scene. They end up taking refuge at the motel, if I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think it's during this time that the Warrens' daughter, Judy, which they set up before. Like, the Warrens have this super dangerous room in their house filled with all this cursed shit. And it's like the no-touch room, which they typically keep locked. But I'm pretty sure, like, their daughter goes in there while they're dealing with the whole, like, other family's case. And then, like, an incident happens where, like, the lady's ghost comes for her, but then, like, the Warrens rush home to go, like, try and take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is where I think we start our final actual crawl, like the final sequence of the movie, where it's like Carolyn disappears with one of the daughters and like heads back to the house because they're like, oh no, she's fully possessed now. And I think this is where they have like that big climactic moment where they have to like tie her up to the chair.
Which one is Carolyn again?
What?
Which one's Carolyn?
I'm pretty sure Carolyn's the mom.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think this is the part where like she basically like tries to sacrifice her daughter, but then like the Wardens of the family get there and they like tie her up. And
yeah, they tie her up in the basement.
Yeah, and to like a wooden chair and throw like a bag over her head.
Well, actually, I think before that they were trying to restrain her, and it was like the guy with the video camera was, recording, and it's like this one woman is dragging around two fully grown men, and it's like,
yeah,
that's some spooky stuff right there.
Yeah, they're just getting the shit kicked out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they do the restraint. They have a line earlier where I think it's back at like the first or second seminar they do, because I think they do two. They do one where they talk about the Annabelle doll, which I think is the first one, and then the second one they talk about like a failed exorcism. And after the second one, one of the students asks Ed, Ed Warren, like, oh, do you perform exorcisms? And he's like, oh, I'm not a priest anymore.
No, I don't think he was like, oh, I'm not a priest anymore. Like, I think it was mentioned that he can do it. It's just he needs to get confirmation by the Vatican or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I knew it was something weird like that, where it's like, yes, I can, but no.
And then he ends up doing it anyways.
Well, yeah, which is the whole point. Like that entirely existed to set up the fact that like, he kind of does this Hail Mary, pun not intended, and it's like, performing the exorcism on Caroline, and then ultimately it works. She like rises up off the chair into the air, and, like slams into the ground. And then actually, I think they give us a fake out where like she escapes and then tries to kill like another daughter, but Lorraine is like able to calm her down with like clairvoyance by recalling like a memory or something, like a moment.
Like
and then
the beach scene.
Oh, was it? Yeah, I think it was the beach scene. They recall like the beach scene, which buys Ed enough time to like finish the exorcism, and it like lifts the curse, banishes the spooky demon, and then they like cut to Ed Warren taking the special cursed music box that I guess was like the heart of it all, and he just like puts it on a shelf in his room.
Yeah, no, just like dust off a spot on the shelf and then like, ooh, added trinket to the many others next to the fucking samurai armor.
Yeah, which there's a lot of really cool shit in that room now that we're kind of done with our plot synopsis. We can just kind of genuinely talk about stuff. Yeah, so that room is actually like a real place. I know that's true.
Yeah.
Like the real Warren house is supposed to be like a supernatural, like demonology museum type thing. This movie started a pretty decent. It started a pretty big franchise. As far as like modern horror stuff goes, where there was like 2 sequels and like some spin-off stuff like Annabelle.
Yeah.
Which made lots of money. This was a very profitable movie. I think the budget was something like $20 million, and then they made like 319. Which, bravo, that's a ton of money for how cheap this movie was made. And give them credit where credit is due. Again, the movie doesn't look bad at all.
Yeah, no, the movie looks very good, and like everything they do with it, it works.
Yeah, like the sound design and stuff was pretty damn good.
Yeah, the I think where the movie shines is definitely in the atmosphere. Not really particularly in when they actually show like ghosts and stuff. The atmosphere, and then like just the over the top scenes, like when the woman is tied up in the chair with the sheet covered over her and she like starts floating upside down and going crazy. I think that's really good.
Yeah, the stuff where they definitely do a lot more I have a hard time saying subtle when it's like the floating sheet over the head chair scene, because that's very much not subtle, but a lot of like the scenes relying on tension were done pretty well. Again, biggest complaint is like the actual execution of the scares is nothing to write home about, and the thing that's scary isn't particularly like frightening. Like the ghost design isn't very spooky at all. Which is kind of a sad reality for a lot of horror movies, is that some of them can get a feeling down really well, or like do the ambiance the way it should be and keep that tension, which is a tough thing to do. But then when they actually are like, oh right, time to be scary and do jump scares, then it kind of falls flat a little bit. And then you have some horror movies where it's like the only passable thing is like creature design.
Yeah, no, it's hard to find a good mix between good atmosphere and then good, like, scares, creature design, whatever. Usually it's like, oh, you know, the creature design's really good, or the atmosphere is really good. There's hardly any, like, mixtures that are very good. I think the only one I can think of off the top of my head is, like, the first Alien movie. Like, xenomorphs are cool, and then like everything about that whole like atmosphere and stuff is really cool.
That movie is horrifying.
Yeah, which no, it's pretty spooky, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we might have to cover that in the future, but I feel like that wouldn't be super interesting because we both are pretty well versed in it.
I've seen it like one time.
I've seen it a few times because I own the box set.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, no, where they definitely played things a little different was they made it very obvious that the family has been dealing with haunts for a bit of time in this house. Where, like, the first time they're showing the Warrens the place, they're just like, oh yeah, we took all of our, like, framed photos off the wall because they would just crash at night and we got sick of putting them back up. And like, oh yeah, we lock these doors because they just slam.
Yeah, no, like, I also wonder, it's like, if you're standing, because there was a scene where she was like at the top of the stairs and then she watches all of the paintings on the stairs just crash and fall down. It's like when are you gonna find help? Because my goodness.
Yeah, and believe it or not, I think that's a decently realistic depiction, which I know there are some people who would have shit like that happen once and then immediately are like, nope, I'm moving, I'm leaving. And I feel like if you're trying to come up with logical reasons why weird shit's happening, you'll like stick it out for longer, or you'll just be like, oh yeah, the doors slam in the house at night. But they definitely show that like they hit a breaking point, which is why they become so desperate for the Warrens' help.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the scenes with the youngest daughter early on? Because I thought those were pretty good.
Like the one where she has the toy box.
The toy box, I would say the hide and seek scene, and then like the few scenes where she's making reference to like imaginary friend, which is pretty tropey, but still done well.
I don't remember the scene about him talking about the imaginary friend too well, but I do remember the scenes where she has the box and she's, you know, playing with it, saying like, oh, my friend. I forget what the friend's name was, but I remember how she's like, oh, you can see him with the box. And then the mom takes it and is like, all right, you know, I'll give it a shot. And she does it, and it sets up the shot so that you're looking in the mirror behind her and you're kind of sitting there like, oh, is it like you're expecting it. You're like, oh, it's gonna pop up on the mirror and it's gonna be a scare, and then it doesn't, and then the kid jumps up and scares the mom, and you're like, wow, really set me up there.
Yeah, impressive scare. Um, I want to talk about some scenes that had me so hyped, but fell flat. And I hate to like compare movies, but I kind of have to. So the scene with the older sisters that share the room. There's like 2 or 3 scenes where it's the night scenes where one of the sisters is getting like kind of tormented.
Yeah, where she sees like the thing in the corner, but the other one doesn't.
Yeah, and neither does the audience, by the way, which is like my big gripe. So it's effective. This girl wakes up in the middle of the night because she felt like something tugging on her leg, and then she like wakes up and is just like, what the hell? And then it's like one big final tug where she like is almost dragged off the bed by nothing. And she is fucking horrified, like understandably so. And she begins to look around the dark room. She's like trying to like whisper awake her sister. She like looks under the bed, and I was expecting a very obvious scare there that didn't happen. Good on them. The subvert my expectations. The door slowly creeps open, and she's like staring at it, and there's this really dark corner behind the open door. And this is where the scene kind of loses gas for me. So, if you remember, she starts to like slowly get more and more desperate because she's like, there's something behind the door. Like, sister, do you see it? Like, and then the sister is just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she like walks over there. And then the sister is like, it's right behind you. And she's just like, okay. And then she like starts screaming. My issue is that we didn't see anything. We just
here's the thing though, like I feel like if they did show something, we would probably be like, I wish they didn't show something. I don't know. I feel like it's one of those scenes where I don't think it's a bad one. I kind of like that they didn't show it. But that's just my personal opinion, because it kind of adds to the weirdness of it. Like, what is she seeing? You know?
So
leaves it to the imagination.
Again, I think the scene for the most part is really good and stands out amongst like some of the spookiest scenes in the movie. But the reason why I say it kind of got to me a little bit and was something that I wanted to bring up was because of movies like Hereditary, which is an unfair comparison to begin with. Like, let's flat out say Hereditary is like basically a masterpiece of horror. Very good movie. And it did a bunch of similar scares with like there's something in the dark, like there's a figure. But they mastered the lighting or editing or whatever technique you do to get that, where you can just see something familiar in the dark. And I wanted something like that to happen. Like, don't show me a demon or something sitting there in the dark, but show me like a silhouette. Like, let me know that there is a reason to be scared. Because, I don't know, I had a hard time being impacted by the scene when it's just this daughter like freaking out over nothing. I felt like the other sister who can't see anything. It's like there's nothing there. Like you're scared, and the fact that you're freaked out makes the situation freakier, but not scary.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying, but then again, like you said, it's not exactly. I don't want to compare it to other movies because I just want to think about it as its own thing. So like, obviously, you know, there's better scenes out there, and there's ways to show like something really creepy and unsettling in that scene, probably, sure, but you know, just looking at the scene as is, I think it suits what it wants to express to us perfectly. Like there's something there and we don't know, because it's like, I think the imagination can be a lot more spooky than like something in the dark. Like sure, you don't know what's in the dark, you can vaguely see it, but if you give it a silhouette, you're giving it something in your mind. Whereas if you don't know what it is in any capacity, it's like that really like leaves you wondering like, what could it be? Is it like a guy? Is it Satan? Is it a goblin? Like what is it that she's seen? Because if you're like looking in the dark in the corner and there's a silhouette, you can be like, oh, it's probably a guy or something. Like, I don't know. I just think that not showing anything was probably the best move in that scene.
Yeah, I guess it's just because like it kind of comes down to that differing of opinion, where it's like, I'm just like, I don't think that scares as effective, but yeah, no, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I don't think the scene is scary per se. It's just like unsettling.
Well, again, and we've kind of stated that before, we didn't really find the movie scary per se.
Yeah. It was just a fun little atmospheric watch.
Oh yeah, no, like at the end of it, I think we both agree that like the movie is bad by no means. Like it is a solid watch. It's kind of, I don't know if I'd call it like a household name, but it's popular, man. You know, it kind of helped kick up like a new horror movie craze for a little bit. And you know, it kind of brought back the haunted house movie genre. Like, credit where credit is due, The Conjuring, like I would consider it like a modern classic. Like people would watch it to watch it.
Yeah, no, I think the reason why it's so good is because it wasn't trying to be so different. Like obviously it had its own uniqueness because of, you know, the plot, the characters, and all the stuff in it, but like I think it set out to do something cool with, like, you know, the kind of haunted house setting, and it did just that. It's like you go into this spooky house, there's spooky things, and spookiness happens, and it's like, oh yeah, it's a solid movie. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a fun watch that, like, I'd say anybody who like gets into horror like for the first time, you know, they watch The Conjuring, it's like, oh yeah, it was a solid movie. It's like you can kind of compare it to, like, I don't want to do comparisons like I said, but like I guess, you know, in terms of just like watching it kind of just to watch it, it's like the old Exorcist movies. I've only seen that one like one time, but it kind of reminded me of that, with almost like the simplicity of it. Like, yeah, there's bad things happening, let's go solve bad thing, and the bad thing is spooky, so we get spooks along the way.
Yeah, and ultimately, yeah, you can describe the horror movie really simply. It's like unsuspecting family moves into a farmhouse, shenanigans ensue.
Yeah.
Like, that's the plot of the movie, and it's not much deeper than that. There's no hidden extra layer of lore, and I'll even say that, like, I don't know exactly how many movies were based on the Amityville horror story. I know there's a few. There's definitely a bunch now. I don't know how many there were at the time, or if there were any, or if this was the first. But the actual concept, like the Amityville haunting, the Amityville horror, that story, the Ed and Lorraine Warren story, it's been done quite a bit, And it actually took me a while, because I'm familiar with other movies that have covered the same thing. But The Conjuring did deviate enough, or at least to a degree, where I didn't catch it at first. Which I don't know if you're familiar with it, Andrew, but I've seen it a few times.
Which movie?
So the setting, or like the story of The Conjuring, is based on like the Amityville Horror, which is the particular case it's based off of, like the real life case of supernatural stuff.
Was this the Amityville one?
Yeah, no, this is.
I didn't know it was the Amityville one. You sure?
I'm pretty sure. Hold on, let's look this up real quick. I want to make doubly sure that I'm not making a false accusation here. We'll go to Professor Google, because Google knows all, sees all, is all. Pretty real life. There are purportedly real-life reports that inspired the Amityville horror story and film franchise. The Warrens came to the assistance of the Perron family, who experienced increasingly disturbing events. Newly occupied farmhouse in Rhode Island in 1971. Okay, so it was the 70s in, like, Rhode Island. Oh, right. Yeah, no, it is... It is related to the Amityville Horror.
Is it like directly related, or only related because like
it says inspired, so they might be based off of the same report, but interpreted differently. Because I've seen several Amityville Horror movies in the past, like 2 or 3 of them. There's a few. But yeah, it's the concept itself. Again, we talked about it, it's not super special, but I would say that this falls in line with what I would consider a modern classic. And if you weren't very into horror movies, or you're trying to get into it, or trying to get another person into it, and you don't want to go really hard, Conjuring's a solid choice. It's a solid recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a good watch. It's not too long. You're there for good fun. I'll say couple of cheap scares every now and then, but you know, that's what they're for. Get your blood pumping. And like, yeah, it's just good atmosphere, you know, keeps you on your toes during the quiet scenes, and all in all, just a solid film.
Yeah. And it's definitely part of its era. It was interesting, to say the least, because I had seen it a long time ago, before we decided that we were going to cover this, especially in our first episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what spurred us to particularly decide on The Conjuring, of all things.
I think it was just because, well, like what we were saying earlier, it's like, it's just like, I don't know, you know, well, let me wrap my brain into what I'm trying to say here, because I have the thoughts, I don't have the words.
I think I get what you're trying to say.
It's just like, when you think of like horror movie, like one of the first things that might pop into your head is The Conjuring, along with a bunch of other things like Friday the 13th, The Exorcist. It's just like one of those movies where, like, if you want someone to tell someone about horror and you're thinking of horror movies, this will probably be like at least in the top 10 of movies you think of. It's just one of those movies, you know?
Yeah, it's got the recognition. It's got like the passing, like walking by it on the street type recognition, where it's like, oh, The Conjuring. I know that's a horror movie of some renown.
Yeah.
And James Wan. Dude is spectacular at building franchises. My man's created Saw and Insidious, so he's good at what he does. Which may or may not be things we cover in the future. Again, kind of open to anything. I don't know what we're particularly planning on covering next, but we'll have to think about that. We started with a nice kind of softball. We might try and do something that we both think is like a good specimen of horror, or that we can both agree on.
Yeah, and we're kind of just like throwing ideas on the walls with this one. We'll kind of figure out a better structure and whatnot as we go along and progress, obviously. But for now, we just like, yeah, Conjuring, solid first choice. We can just kind of talk about it,
Not maybe super deep.
Yeah, no, we're not like going into it like, what are the characters thinking? How does the cinematography work? Because I know nothing about that. All I know is person scream when ghosts go boo.
Yeah, and it's like that kind of comes back to it, where it's like, this is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. Just because we don't have a whole lot to say, and that kind of plays into like, The Conjuring's just a nice, simple movie, and it's just like, that's it. It's simple. There's not too much to talk about apart from like the plot and particular moments we thought did well and didn't do well. Definitely kind of want to see if we can find something that is particularly a little bit like a step up as far as like horror, like genuine horror, because you gotta love those moments where a movie transcends from like a kind of cheesy thriller, which is what a lot of really mainstream horror movies are. It's just like these cheap thrills and jump scares, into a genuine like dread and horror. So I'm really curious. I'd say we're pretty open to suggestion too, like even some of the more obscure things. Like, if you can genuinely be like, oh, hey, like, this is a solid movie that's particularly not super well known, that'd be cool. Especially since, like Andrew said, like, we're not the greatest at picking apart, like, the actual technical camera work. Because we're pretty casual film enjoyers.
Yeah, we're not sitting here looking at the camera work going, beautiful cinematography, and we're not like picking apart character archetypes and like motivations and whatnot. It's just like what we see at face value is what we'll talk about.
Yeah, and if we do go in depth on something, note that kind of means something, because like, we're casual viewers, and it's kind of like we're able to appreciate it, so maybe you will as well. Type thing, where it's like, when I kept bringing up that this movie looked like good for its age, that's because I genuinely noticed that, because I forgot how old this movie was when we decided to watch it, and so I was like, oh, this might not look the greatest. And then I was genuinely shocked that, like, oh no, this is actually pretty nice looking. Like, the quality's good. and the audio was done really well too.
Yeah, no, when I was thinking about The Conjuring, I was sitting here like, yeah, that came out like 2018, 2019. Then I look and it's 2013 and I'm like, what?
I know, right? It's wild. It's a 10-year-old movie, which I would say is decently old for movies. Like they age pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It is astonishing. It almost makes me think that if someone wanted to, they could go back and almost recut the movie or just throw in some extra edits, and it would actually be like pretty up to snuff with some modern day stuff, or it would be like pretty comparable.
Yeah, but you're definitely gonna have the type of thing where it's like, would changing it kind of ruin what it was, you know?
Yeah, would it take away the magic to emulate like a different style of horror? Would that be true to the? I guess not to sound too like putting on my beret and like waxing poetic, but like, would that be true to what the original vision was? And then that's where you get into that territory where it's like, yeah, you could make The Conjuring scarier if you just went back and tweaked some things. But ultimately it'd be a different movie. Which, yeah, no. Good movie. I definitely give it I give it a good hearty recommendation. If you're trying to get into horror, or you just haven't seen it and kind of want to appreciate a bit of horror history.
Or even if you have seen it, it's just a good movie to watch again.
Yeah, no, like we found ourselves, because I think we had both were in the same situation where we like watched it vaguely a long time ago and didn't really remember much.
I barely remembered anything from my first viewing, so watching it for the second time, I was kind of like remembering as it was going along, but at the end of the day I was just like, well, that was an interesting movie I just watched, because I didn't know much going in.
Yeah, I know how you felt. Yeah, no, this movie's pretty solid. If you just want, like, you're a little bit jaded, maybe you're a little bit of a snob, I would say I'm kind of on that spectrum as far as like being able to tell. Like I've watched enough horror that I kind of have an opinion about what I want in one. So I would say if you're purely on your own looking just for a good horror movie, you might not want to waste your time if you're not wanting to like just appreciate the film.
And if you're like me, who doesn't watch horror movies, it's pretty good. Go watch it.
Yeah, it's I would say even if you're doing like a horror movie night with friends or family, genuinely solid pick. And ultimately that's what it's down for. Is it's like a overall very appealing horror movie. So we could probably start going into like our ending statements now. I would say, like, again, if any listeners have recommendations, any particular movies you would like us to check out, we would be pretty open. We'll probably let you know, because certain movies that we've seen front to back, we might not want to do a long form thing on, because it's just going to be us gushing about the movie the entire time. Like, I don't think we'll cover Hereditary. We've been pretty obvious about the fact that we both like that movie. We may do a shorter form style review for things we've seen that we think are good. Andrew, I know you were thinking about potentially doing some game-related stuff.
Maybe.
Alright. Yeah, I know we kind of appreciate like horror as the whole genre. So if you guys would maybe like to see some game stuff, we might try and set that up. Play like some horror games ranging from like Outlast type stuff to maybe some more obscure things. Maybe play some Faith. I know that's a pretty solid like pixel horror game. But we're just kind of keeping an ear to the ground, and yeah. If you guys liked our first episode, go ahead, give us a like. If you have other like-minded friends who might just want to listen to dudes casually ramble about a horror movie for like an hour, go ahead and share, because anything helps. We're gonna just try and keep getting better at this and getting more refined and having more to say and kind of getting better and punchier with how this goes. So, we're always trying to improve, and we thank you for taking the time to like give us a chance, especially since there's so much to watch out there and so much to listen to. And so I say thank you. And any closing statements, Andrew?
Yeah, just thank you for if you've made it here. Hitting about a little over an hour mark. Yeah, well, just what I said earlier. Just, we'll slowly prove the structures of podcasts, and who knows, maybe we'll go down different routes later down the road, but for now, just doing this for fun, having a good time, having a few laughs every now and then. And yeah, just hope you enjoyed listening to this. That's all I have to say about that.
And remember, I'll see you further down the stream. Good night.